WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. It is time for the program called Legally Yours. John Fuller is your host. He's an attorney here in Ocala at the law firm of Fuller and Fuller, and he's here to answer your questions about the law, and we invite you to call to ask John those questions. The number is 622-WOCA, the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline, 622-9622, and you need to know what date it is because sometimes John is in court. So if your calendar says today is Wednesday, January 29th, 2014, and maybe you're relatively cold, I don't know, then you're listening to a live show. So call in 622-9622 and speak to John Fuller. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Larry.
How you doing?
How are you? I'm good. It's good to see you again, and it's good to be here. And look forward to talking with our listeners if they have questions about our legal system or they're facing or one of their family or friends are facing a legal issue that we could address, at least in general terms, in this program. It's always our pleasure to do that. Certainly if someone has a legal matter that affects them or their family, they need to go consult with a lawyer and speak to the lawyer in their office. And we'd be happy to do that if it's in our area of practice, which is trial law, Social Security, disability. So if you have a question, we'd like to hear from you.
And do any of the things that the president said last night apply to the Social Security disability or to Medicare?
You know, it's really hard to tell or interpolate from the State of the Union. I really don't know. It's the fallout. Most of those. Can you remember anything that the president said last year in the State of the Union? Can you remember any specific action that occurred out of that in terms of detailed legislation or executive orders? And that was a point that I heard one of the commentators make a few days ago, that State of the Union gets him a lot of press coverage, and I thought from a oratorical standpoint, I thought he did a masterful job.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not expressing a political view.
Right,
I'm just
right.
expressing for a guy to get up there and have great command of the English language and to speak to his audience. I thought he did a masterful job. You know, it's really interesting that probably one of the great geniuses of our republic was Thomas Jefferson. Wrote the Declaration, wrote the Constitution. He didn't do it by himself, but was the chief architect. Was a Renaissance man. He was an engineer. He was an artist. He was a vineyard. Had his own vineyards at Monticello. He was just a genius. But he didn't think he was well spoken. And so he always wrote his State of the Union message and sent it to Congress in writing. He was the only president, I believe, that did that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and my wife says I know more useless trivia than anybody she knows. So
I have to remember that
maybe that tidbit was interesting, but he did. He wrote out his State of the Union message and sent it because the Constitution requires that the president address Congress once a year and inform them of the State of the Union.
So he addressed them in writing.
And of course, if I wrote like Thomas Jefferson, I would probably never utter another word.
That's a good point too. All right, you do have a phone call, and just to remind everybody. Today is January 29th. I tell you the date so you know if you're listening to a live show or not, which is important. Sometimes John is in court and can't be here, but he's live today on the 29th. So call 622-9622 if you'd like to be on the air. You'll wait on hold for a few minutes because we have a caller coming in right now. Good morning. You're on the air with John Fuller.
Good morning.
Good morning. I got a question for you. I keep getting these notification of payment and award letters, and most of the times I think they're mostly scams, but I don't know, I'm getting surprised now they're sending me letters from different ones. It says that they give me a check on there that's ready to deposit.
Are these from countries in the Middle East or Africa or South America or some foreign country?
It doesn't say that on there.
Well, my belief, and this has been going around for about 20 years. Those things are basically scams from what I've heard and what I've seen. And my response, my personal response to those things is I immediately hit the delete button.
Yeah. Okay, but the thing is, I figure this way too. Why should I cash that check, even if it's supposed to be good? They would get my signature, right, and my maybe the name of the bank or something, right?
Correct. Absolutely correct.
So that's what they're probably looking for. They don't see. Some of them ask for money to receive.
Right. Well, if
check,
something,
but
if
this
something
one doesn't ask me to receive it.
Well, if something,
send any money.
I found very little, if anything, in life is you free. You don't get something for. Right. You don't get something if you don't get something.
To be true, right?
You don't get something for nothing, and if it sounds too good to be true, it probably isn't. So
okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
It sounded like he had an actual paper check that was sent to him. Could he take it to a state attorney's office or something?
I suppose so, but those things come out like weeds, and they are they may come under some. Usually, they come from a foreign country.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely what's really sad is it a lot of times those things prey on people who are. I'm not suggesting this gentleman was, because he certainly had questions and good points, but they are people who are naive. They are people who are not sophisticated or well educated. They are people who are elderly who live in hope that they're going to win the lottery, and that keeps them going. I once heard a minister say, what's the great thing about the lottery is where else can you buy hope for $1? I think he's on the right track to ignore it. So let's take our next caller.
Yes, sir. And good morning. You're on the air with John Fuller.
Good morning, Mr. Fuller. I have 2 questions about wills.
Okay.
If I make out a will, when is it effective? In other words, if I stood up from the desk and keeled over, is the will effective immediately?
If it's properly executed, yes.
Okay, thank you. And the other question is, how long after a person's death can a will be challenged? In other words, if I keeled over dead, and how long would someone have to challenge that will? I mean, is there like a statute of limitations on that or anything?
It depends on how it is handled by the personal representative. There is a provision. And understand, I am not a will, estate, or probate lawyer. This is not my area of expertise. So if you have a specific factual scenario that involves you, you need to consult with a lawyer who specializes in wills, estates, trusts, and probate. There is a provision in the probate code that you can publish. It's called the non-claim period, and you publish it in a paper of general circulation in the area where the estate is being probated, and you publish that, and it provides that any and all claims of creditors against the estate must be filed within 4 months, or else they are barred.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fuller. Have a great day.
Thank you for calling. You too, sir.
Yeah, wills are an interesting thing, and when you said if it was properly executed in your first answer to his first question, what does that mean?
A will has to be executed with what is called testamentary formality. It has to, because it is such an important document. It never comes into effect and becomes an active document until after the person who was the author of it has died, and therefore you cannot seek to clarify what he meant, and therefore it has to be executed with great formality. It has to be in Florida, and may vary by state. So if you're in another state, you need to check with a lawyer in another state. It has to be executed with in the presence of 2 witnesses who are in the presence of the person who makes the will and at the same time in the presence of each other. The person who makes the will has to answer certain questions in those witnesses' present to establish that he or she has testamentary capacity. They are questions to show that the person is oriented in time, space, and person, that he knows where he is, who he is, and he is as knowledgeable of his affairs and who are the natural objects of his bounty, and that he is of sound mind, that he's not under the influence of any medications that would affect his ability to know these things, to have his cognitive abilities, and that he wants these people to witness his last will and testament. He signs this in the presence of two witnesses who are in the presence of each other, and also, in order for the will to be self-proving, you have a third person there who is a notary public who take the acknowledgement that the individual is swearing that this is his last will and testament and does represent his wishes as to how he wants his affairs to be disposed of in the event of his death. If it doesn't have any of those features, if it doesn't have all of those features in it, it may very well not be validly executed and would be an invalid will. It's the most formal document. It has the most required formalities as to how you sign it. And if there is any question, it is wise to be certain that there are independent evidence that the person who makes the will does have all of his mental faculties that are functioning at the time he makes the will. The Florida law says that you can have mental issues, you can have cognitive issues, but if you have a lucid moment, and during that lucid moment you have these cognitive functions working, as we talked about, oriented as the time-space person, know who are the natural objects of your bounty, know what you have, can swear under oath that you are aware of all of this, and you want the two witnesses in your presence to bear witness to that and to acknowledge under oath that they have done so before a notary public who signs it and affixes the stamp and the date and fills out what is called the jurat, J-U-R-A-T. If you have a lucid moment, you can have a valid will, even if the next day you are not lucid. And, some people have mental illnesses or medication that affect them. When I used to do that, if there was any question, I always tried to get the person's medical provider, doctor or whatever, if a person's in the hospital, the nurse, that he's not on medication at the time he makes the will. If, for instance, he's been prescribed pain medication, I suggest to the individual that if they can, they try not to take the pain medication for a period of time, even if they are in pain, so that there's no question that their mental faculties are impaired by some type of medication. I like to have the healthcare providers, whether it's the doctor or the nurse or whatever, to note the patient's chart if the patient is in a hospital or a skilled nursing care facility or assisted living facility or somewhere where it might give rise to some question later on if it gets challenged that this person was lucid this day, they had not had any of their medication that would affect or potentially impair their faculties, their mental faculties, and have those things noted and charted.
The phone number, if you'd like to call John, is 622-WOCA, and that is the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline. So could you, in a will, the first thing I got out of that was you can't just write it on a napkin.
Well, there are things such as holographic wills, and under certain circumstances, they can be valid and enforceable in Florida. You can have a handwritten will.
Now, could you leave to somebody your future earnings? And here's to clarify what I mean. I've written probably 2,000 songs. I have never really made much money on them, but some people say, you know what happens? After you die, people want to buy them.
Well, you know what? The people listening to this show might do a lot better if I hushed and you started singing, Larry. You might sell some of those 2,000 songs, buddy.
But I mean, or let's say an artist that has paintings and he dies.
Sure. You know, that's part of your estate.
Like Stephen Foster, for example, he died with like nothing. His songs went on to become hugely successful. Yeah. Could he have left a will that said, look, I've made nothing, but my son, if in case my songs ever make money, I'd like my son to get the money.
Yeah, that's an asset of the estate. I assume that you are a member of the American Society of Composers and whatever, and you would get royalties on it under ASCAP's rules.
I got the other one.
If you're a songwriter, you do that. Even if you co-write the song, you get certain royalties when the song is performed and so forth and so on. So, that's an asset of your estate. That would be up to your personal representative after your death to see that those assets were marshaled and preserved and set aside so that, the income from that would be disposed of. Now, the way you would do that is if you say, well, I give my estate to my children. Let's say you have 2 children. You say, I give my estate to my 2 children in equal shares, share and share alike.
Yeah.
Then whatever assets you have would be theirs. So the proceeds or potential proceeds from these songs would ultimately, at the end of the probate, which just means to prove, establish, wrap up, and conclude your estate, when they dispersed your assets, they would assign an undivided half interest of the proceeds from those songs to each of the beneficiaries of your estate. And let me say again, and I'm happy to go down this road with you or with our callers, but I do not practice in the area of wills, estates, probates, or trusts. That's an area that you need to speak with a specialist in because it is very different than what I do. I'm a litigation lawyer. I try cases. I don't prepare wills. I don't probate estates. I don't handle tax matters. And so this is asking questions in this area with great specificity are things I want to make clear that these are kind of general answers that I'm giving. If you had an appendicitis, you wouldn't call your dermatologist and talk to him about your appendix. And so while I'm happy to share what general knowledge I have and discuss it in general terms, I really want to emphasize that is a specialized area of the law.
But you know a lot more about it than most of us. So
well, I know general things.
That might be why people call and ask those questions.
But the law changes, and there are certain fundamentals, just like, everybody, no matter what their medical specialty is, they all had to go through medical school, and they all had to take a rotation, whether it was in obstetric gynecology, orthopedic surgery, general surgery, internal medicine. We've all had to have some exposure to it, but that's a long way from being a specialist.
I like when I hear you go into defense attorney mode. It's very fascinating. But I do have a question about something that I actually am going through right now. So since nobody's on the phone, I'll tell you.
Yeah, sure. Happy to talk about everything. I just don't want to mislead people with general comments because these are questions that need to be carefully analyzed in light of the specific facts and the specific law.
So I'll tell you my question first, and then I'll tell you what leads up to that. My question would be: Should I file a lawsuit against somebody? That's going to be my question at the end. And here's where it comes from. I ordered a guitar from a company in Vermont August 15th. Their rules were you send us $300 on August 15th, and 3 months later, November 15th, we'll invoice you for another $300. The whole guitar costs $575 and $25 for shipping and handling, okay? So the $600 will be paid 3 months, the other $300 3 months later. So I wrote them, I said, I haven't received any invoice. What do I do? And they said, oh, don't worry. We're running 7 to 9 days behind. You'll get it in 7 to 9 days. This was November 15th. 7 to 9 days later, well, actually 9 days later, I called them back. I said, I still don't have anything. What do I do? And they really said nothing. They basically said, well, just you have to be patient with us. We'll get to it. Well, then, long story short, I wrote them letters. I made them phone calls, just leaving messages, not getting any correspondence. Finally, I got a correspondence, and the guy said, well, it's been very busy, and our product is not as good as we want it to be, so we'll send you photographs of a B line, a less than perfect guitar. We'll sell it to you for cheaper. And I said, well, okay, send me the photographs, and I'll make a decision. Okay. No photographs, no nothing. I eventually got fed up and wrote them a letter telling them so. And I said, you know what? Just send me my $300 back. Again, several phone calls, several letters, nothing. Finally, I get a letter back, email, saying, yes, we will put $300 back into your PayPal account. That's 2 weeks ago. Nothing yet. So,
have you checked into this company? Have you contacted the
everywhere
consumer?
I could.
Well, I would because it's in Vermont and because it's $500. The short answer to your question is yes, you can sue them.
But how do I sue them?
The question is, that's a very good question as to whether you sue them here in Florida, which you could conceivably argue is the correct venue because this is where the contract was made. This is where you made the agreement to purchase it, and this is where you made the payment from. And you could file a suit in summary claims court because it is under the jurisdictional threshold. So you would, you would file it yourself. There's no way it would be economically feasible for a lawyer to do it. You would have to get them served in Vermont, and you would have to have some long-arm jurisdiction that they had some contact to wit advertising or doing business in the state of Florida. I would, before I tried to do that, I would check with the Consumer Affairs Division with the Attorney General's office in Florida and in Vermont to see whether or not this is a real company or whether or not it's a scam, and see if they could not provide you some information. I'd go online and Google them and see, are they a valid corporation? Are they licensed to do business? Have they registered to do business in Florida? You can check all that out online, and you can call the Consumer Affairs Division of the Attorney General's Department, and they may be able to be help you more meaningfully than a lawsuit. Because all a lawsuit, remember, if you file a lawsuit and you win, you get a judgment. That judgment is a piece of paper that says the defendant owes you money.
Right.
All right? That does not mean that money all of a sudden spews forth from the defendant. You then have to go and try to find assets to get a writ of garnishment or a writ of execution to go levy on those assets to the extent of the money that you are owed.
And by that time, you've spent more money than you're going to get. Well,
and time and aggravation, and a lot of companies that are on the periphery, they know this, and I don't understand, what's going on with this company.
Right.
When they said, keep all your correspondence. Number two, a really good rule of thumb, whenever you're dealing with anyone about any kind of business or financial transaction, don't do it on the phone, or if you do, immediately confirm it in writing. Email's fine if you download it, but certified letter is certainly better. And but I would go and seek inquiry into the validity of this company through the Consumer Affairs Department of the Attorney General.
Yeah, I might just be out $300 is what it might be.
Well,
it sounds like it's going to cost more to fight it.
That's very unfortunate, and you don't hear that much anymore with companies that advertise and you pay through PayPal, and that was one of the big things about buying things through these online services. Email, what is it? I don't do it, but.
Like Amazon?
Amazon and
well, that's the thing with Amazon. It's established. This is a standalone company.
Yeah, right.
And they have one product, and it's this guitar.
Right. And by their own concession, the one they were trying to sell you is an inferior product.
Yes. 1 out of every 4, they say, has blemishes on it. I said, well, I can live with blemishes, as long as it sounds good. But
well, I don't know what to tell you. I have a very nice Gibson that I bought at a pawn shop for $100. That's an acoustic, and it's if you talk to me after the show, if you want a great deal on it, I can't. I know 3 chords and can't play but 2 of them.
Oh no! Well, this particular guitar is supposed to be rugged. It's supposed to withstand the heat, the cold. You take it in your backpack. It's made out of carbon fiber instead of wood.
It sounds very interesting. I know some friends of mine who are big ski enthusiasts in Colorado, and they go cross country skiing. And one of them has a foldable, portable guitar.
Wow!
That he can actually carry in his backpack and carry it skiing.
Well, that's kind of what this. It doesn't fold, but it's rugged in that way. So
yeah, well. Interesting. I think you've got problems, and I think the biggest problem is the economic reality that you can spend more time, money, etc., trying to get your $300 back. And so I would make inquiries through the organizations that we've talked about.
Well, thank you, John.
But that's unfortunate.
Disappointing, but thank you.
Well, it's unfortunate that you have no. They're in Vermont. You're here. Presumably, they're in Vermont. They may be a post office box somewhere in Vermont.
That's true. You never know.
I would certainly suggest to anyone who's going to do business and send money to an organization in another state that you go online and Google them. You check the corporate records division of the state to see, are they a valid and viable corporation, or have they been dissolved? What is their address, or is it simply a post office box?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Sean, what is your number so somebody who might need your services could call you?
Our office number is 352-547-4292. We have a toll-free number, 855-534-2565. If you've been injured in an automobile wreck or you have a business commercial dispute, we certainly would be happy to make you a conference and to see if we could help you. My wife and partner, Janet, specializes in Social Security disability work, and if you feel that you have a valid claim for Social Security disability and would like to speak with her about that, she specializes in that area.
All right, excellent. Thank you, John, for all you do for us.
Oh, thank you. It's always a pleasure. I appreciate the chance to come in each morning, and I wish the best to all of our listeners.
And stay warm out there.
Yeah, really.
Not too bad today. It'll get better this week. All right, we'll take a little break, and we'll be right back.
Ocala's information.